Introduction. Can you introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been in the pawn shop business?
Hi, how are you? My name is Ronnie. I have been in the pawn shop business for over 20 years now. Started in the industry when I was in my 20s. My family has been in the business for, I'd say, about 45 years.
What motivated you to get into this line of work?
So for me, it's a little more personal. I'm a son of immigrants. My parents immigrated to the U.S. in the 70s, and opposed to the 90s, the 70s was very, very rough. They didn't have a lot of money. My father was a full-time full-time dishwasher, didn't understand the language. My mother was a medical assistant, and there were many times where we struggled to make ends meet. And told my mom once, I said, hey mom, you have maybe an opportunity, maybe try to get some kind of a loan to cover some of the bills so that you don't have to struggle so much. And my mom said, I don't have credit built up in the United States, and she was very uncomfortable about going out and trying to get a loan because she was very skeptical that she would be able to do so. Ironically, we did some research, got some nice references, and walked into a well-known pawn brokerage. And my mother was able to borrow against her family heirloom watch and get a loan within 10 minutes, which satisfied her completely and took care of our problems at the time where no one else could help. So I had a strong reaction to that situation and saw how that particular business helped my family at the time of our need, and kind of drove me to want to get into the field when I got older, and here I am today.
How does a pawn shop work? Can you explain the process of pawning an item?
Sure. Well, a client would typically walk in either referred or after researching and finding that that we had the top reviews online. Client would basically walk into the office or make an appointment, bring in their valuables. It would be appraised by one of our expert appraisers. The appraisals are 100% free. We do free appraisals here for our clients. After the item is appraised, we typically ask the client of what they're here for and what is the amount that they needed to take care of the issue that they're having. We typically try to satisfy them or even lend them more than what they need, just in case. The client would then hand us the item. We would analyze it, seal it up in a heat seal serialized bag, safe and secure, place the item in one of our storage facilities in the bank's vault, and hand over cash, check, or wire transfer immediately, depending on the client's preference.
What types of items do you commonly deal with?
So we deal in high-end jewelry. That's what we specialize in. High-end watches, jewelry, estate jewelry, silver jewelry, platinum jewelry, diamonds, antiques, which are involved in the jewelry, precious metal, and precious stone industry.
Coins?
Specifically coins, yes. We do deal with coins as well. We consider that being a high valued item, whether they're gold or silver, platinum. We do deal with coins as well.
How do you determine the value of an item? What resources or tools do you use?
Well, what happens is what we use is the knowledge of either myself or one of the other appraisers at the company, who would typically analyze and appraise based on their expertise. And then what we do, we also have a verification process where each individual employee has to be double checked by another employee to consider value. So what they would do is they would typically get the appraiser's assertion and assessment, and then they would double check it with technology that we have today, especially with AI and Google, and they would compare and see what the item is typically selling for or has been sold for, to just make sure that the appraiser is doing the right job and appraised it properly. So we have a 3-step verification process for appraisals here at New York One Pawn. So we also have, besides our licensed and certified appraisers, our appraisers are GIA graduates, precious metal experts who have been in the precious metal business for many, many years. And not only that, we also have a state-of-the-art spectrometer which analyzes all precious metals via X-ray, as opposed to other pawn shops who typically scratch test your gold on a stone and damage your jewelry. So here we are very particular that we don't damage your jewelry. You walk into a regular pawn shop, they will scratch test your gold on a stone without even asking you. And the only time you'll know about that is when you get your jewelry back. We don't do that. We don't damage your jewelry. That's why we've invested in the state-of-the-art technology in order to protect your valuables, because we care.
Understanding pawn shop loans. How pawn shop loans work, can you explain the process?
Well, the way the pawn shop works is the client would bring in their article, we would appraise it, make an agreement with the client based on their needs, request for identification so everything gets scanned and processed properly, seal the loan, mark it, cash out the customer, whether it's cash, check, or wire transfer based on the client's needs and wants, and then we put it in one of our storage facilities, whether it's in the bank vault or in one of our vaults, to make sure that the item is safe and secure. Then the client has up to 4 to 6 months. I mean, it's the client's choice. Some clients would rather a longer term loan, some a 4-month term loan. We can do either. We also give the client the ability to pick up their loan within any time of that term of the loan. So if they typically use the loan anytime within the first 30 days, they would only be charged for 1 month, as opposed to the whole term of the loan, similar to what banks do. They charge you prorated fees and certain fees. We don't. It's to use the month, you pay for the month.
Obtaining a loan. What steps does one need to follow to get a loan at a pawn shop? Are there any specific requirements or documents needed?
So absolutely not. We are the people's bank, and we strongly stand behind those words. And what we mean by that is we are not a socialistic company. We don't intrude in your credit history. We don't ask where you're from. We are not prejudiced. We don't prejudge. And we're here only to help and to serve you, the people. So basically, all you need is your ID, and there are no other questions asked. You are typically out of the office within 15 minutes with all the cash.
Loan amounts. On average, how much can someone expect to borrow from a pawn shop?
So depending on the item collateralized, a person can borrow anywhere from $50 up to $500,000 on a loan, depending on what they need and what they have.
Loan duration. How long does a typical pawn shop loan last?
So a typical pawn shop loan term is 4 months. We extend that courtesy to our client, and we give them the option of 6 months. That'll be their choice to keep them secure. And now we also give them the right to come in anytime during the duration of the loan. If they choose to pay less, they can pick up their loan much sooner and pay only a fraction of the agreed amount.
Non-payment consequences. What happens if a customer is unable to pay back a pawn shop loan? What are the consequences of defaulting on the loan?
So New York One Pawn has the lowest default rating in the country. New York One Pawn works with our clients as much as we can to make sure that they don't default on their valuables and their family's heirlooms. So typically when a client is behind and he's having trouble paying, we always usually figure out a way to break the payments down in installments and help the client get back on their feet and pull out their loan. If the client chooses to default on their loan, then based on the agreement with the client, the pledge would then be sold. And that money would be used to satisfy the amount that would be due, typically to cover the amount of the loan plus the interest that was due to the company.
Interest rates. How much interest does a pawn shop typically charge on a loan?
So a typical pawn shop in New York charges up to 73.5% a year, which includes all of these different kinds of fees, hidden fees that they put into their loan agreements. We charge as low as 1% per month. We don't have hidden fees.
Wow, it's very cheap.
That's correct. Our rates are anywhere from 1 to 4%, depending on the loan amount, depending on the percentage of collateralization. Each client has different needs and requests, and what we do is we do our best to accommodate no matter what.
Additional insights. Loan extensions and renewals. Can customers extend or renew their pawn shop loans? If so, what is the process and are there any additional costs involved?
Of course. So typically after a loan is made, we give the clients, like we said, up to 6 months to either extend or redeem their loan. We pay them and we don't request any money up front. When the client is ready to redeem, only then would we request for the interest agreed upon for the arrears the previous months that are due to us at the time of redemption or at the time of extension. If you're having trouble coming up with the whole amount, we'll be willing to take a small interest rate as we agreed in order to extend the pledge 4 months or 6 months later. We would reissue you another pledge to give you another term so that you can have much more time to redeem your loan. There is no risk.
Item retrieval. Once the loan is paid off, how does the process of retrieving the pawned item work? Is there any waiting period?
Usually it takes just as much time to retrieve a pawn as it does to make a pawn. Basically, client would come in, hand us over their pawn slip. If it's a very high-end loan, a lot of money involved, a lot more security, we usually request 24-hour notice prior to pickup, but generally a client can just walk in with their pledge and or their ID and be able to retrieve their loan within 15 minutes of coming into the business.
Advantages over other loan types. What advantages do pawn shop loans offer compared to other types of loans or credit options?
So at New York One Pawn, the reason why we consider ourselves the People's Bank is, number one, as opposed to general banks which require lengthy hours of applications, background checks, and waiting time in order to receive a potential loan. New York One Pawn has the funds in your hands or in your account within 15 minutes of walking into the establishment. Unintrusive, all we need is your ID, and that's all that's needed to pick up. Other companies that do small business loans, we consider that close to predatory lending. The rates are ridiculous. So I would recommend to stay away from predatory lenders and stay away from regular banking institutions. If you can, just walk into the People's Bank, New York One Pawn, and we will take care of all of your needs.
Privacy and credit impact. How do pawn shop loans impact a customer's credit score? Is the loan process confidential?
So the typical pawn shops, very confidential, as opposed to, again, a regular typical bank where you would walk in, your information is in their database, can be compromised, someone else can pull up that information. With the pawn shops, your items are completely safe and secure and 100% private. There is no one that will know your business ever. It's the most private transaction, secure and safe, that is possible to do when getting a loan.
Selling items to pawn shop. Item suitability. What types of items are you most interested in buying? Are there certain items that tend to fetch a higher price?
We are interested in all items that are considered to be high value, and we analyze them as they come in. Typically, we prefer jewelry, watches, diamonds. That's what we specialize in. But we would entertain estate pieces as well, antiques as well. Basically, you just give us a call and we'd let you know if we would be interested in purchasing the items from you. We typically pay out up to 99.5% of value. So if you want top dollar, I recommend coming to New York One Pawn and getting a loan, or you can sell.
Condition and value. How important is the condition of an item when selling it to a pawn shop?
So the condition of the item is the only way that it impacts a sale is that, we take into consideration if we are able to resell the item, then obviously we would give a higher value on a purchase as opposed to another item which is either dented or damaged and unrepairable, which in essence would have to be melted. Where there we would have to pay up to the full amount of where the gold value would be at the time of the client selling the item.
Preparation. Is there anything sellers should do to their items before bringing them in to sell for cash? For example, cleaning, testing, and providing accessories or documentation.
Absolutely not. I mean, if their items are name brand, if they're backed by Tiffany, Cartier, Rolex, or any high-end name, which definitely increases obviously the value to a typical piece of jewelry, that would give us more belief that the item would be a certified 100% authentic item from those companies, then in essence would fetch you much more money at the time of sale or at the time of loan.
Appraisal process. How do you determine the value of an item brought in for sale?
Sure, a client would come in and let us know what they have. We would then connect them to one of our professional appraisers, and the item would be assessed by that particular agent who has started working with that client, and the process would be done immediately. I mean, they would, analyze it, assess it based on their professional experience and knowledge, and we will be very transparent with the client immediately on what they have.
Is there room for negotiation on the price offered for an item?
The greatest thing about our location, our business, is we try to get as much as we can to our clients. We care about them coming back to me. We focus on quantity. We want our clients coming back. We don't mind making a minimal profit, but we like the relationships. We want our customers to keep coming back to us. So we tend to offer up to 99.5% of the value on our own. But educated consumers and customers are our favorite. The more you're knowledgeable, the more that you're aware of your item, the easier it becomes for us to make the deal with you.
How quickly can a seller expect to receive cash after agreeing to sell an item? Are there any conditions or exceptions?
Absolutely not. Within 15 minutes of entering the business, you would be greeted by one of our expert appraisers who would then analyze, discuss, and come to an agreement with you on a price which would satisfy you and the company. You would have to hand in a piece of ID. Our computerized system would get your receipt printed out within a couple of minutes, and you'd be out the door.
Seller's remorse. If a seller changes their mind, is there a period during which they can return to buy back their item?
Yes, at New York One Pawn, we give all sellers the option of converting their sale into a loan 2 weeks within the time of the item being sold. So basically, if a client sold an item today and they call us within 2 weeks' time of the item being sold, the item can be converted into a loan if the client has seller's remorse.
If they want back their item,
If they want it back, they can purchase the item back as long as we still have the item.
legal considerations. What kind of paperwork or documentation is required to sell an item to a pawn shop? How do you ensure that the items are not stolen?
That's a very good question. Here at New York One Pawn, we make sure that the client, number one, has a valid form of ID, whether it's state issued or federally issued ID, a passport typically, a driver's license, or a state ID. And then we ask the client if the item belongs to them, and we ask some questions just to get a little more comfortable of the item that we are purchasing or lending against. We do the best that we can. And the ID itself is the key. And having that on file, we do our best to work with law enforcement. And if there's ever an issue, we are here to make sure that all the necessary guidelines and steps are followed based on the law.
Do you buy items in bulk or do you prefer individual high-value items? How does selling in bulk affect the price?
The more you have, the more you get. Everything is determined by weight. So you're selling by gram. You have a piece that's 5 grams, or you have 10 pieces, it makes it 50 grams. You're going to get 99.5% of the value. So it doesn't determine the amount, doesn't determine you getting a different value. We pay and lend top dollar here at New York One Pawn.
Are there certain times of the year or economic conditions when it's better to sell items to a pawn shop?
The best time to sell to a pawn shop is when you need the money. That's the best time to sell to a pawn shop. Otherwise, I recommend holding on to your valuables, and I would rather the client get a loan against their items so they don't have remorse in the future if that's possible. But if they want to sell, I recommend only to sell when they need the money for something. If you don't need the money, I recommend hold on to the merchandise. It has a greater chance of increasing in value as opposed to money.
What advice do you have for individuals looking to get the most money for their items? Are there any common mistakes to avoid?
The only mistake is going anywhere else. You come to New York One Pawn, you're going to get top dollar.
How do you handle rare or uncommon items? Do you have experts to appraise unique items, or are there items you won't buy because they're too niche?
Every individual is addressed specifically to what their need is and to what they have. And if there is any kind of a niche item, then that would typically take us a little bit longer to research. But we do our best to figure out value of everything that comes through our door to try to accommodate our customers.
Ethical and business practices. How do you ensure fair and ethical treatment of sellers? Are there industry standards or practices you follow?
No. My father is an immigrant of the 70s in New York City. And he's always told me that don't ever judge anyone, never be prejudiced, and always do your best to help people. And I followed that motto my whole life. Anyone that walks in the door, everyone is treated the same to the highest standard of respect in New York One Pawn.
Does pawn shop need license?
Of course, licensed pawnbroker has to be licensed for pawnbrokering. You have to be licensed by the Department of Consumer Affairs in New York City to be able to operate, and you have to have a very strong, clean record to be in the industry.
How has your pawn shop built its reputation in the community as a fair and reliable place to sell items?
So typically, anyone would only talk fondly of themselves. I've rarely seen people that talk other. So I would highly recommend our clients refer to Google and see what the people have said. And that's your answer. Google reviews and ratings is the #1 place to go to make sure that you're dealing with the right people. I don't recommend doing business with any company prior to checking their Google ratings and reading what people have said. Thankfully, that's what puts us at our pedestal of being #1 in the pawn industry.
In New York.
In New York City, yes.
Have you noticed any trends in the types of items people are selling?
Absolutely not. We deal with the business day to day. There are no trends. We deal with every transaction based on what it's about at the time and the value of where the item is at the day of the transaction. We don't rely on trends. We don't do any of that. We just take care of the item on hand when we receive it.
Challenges and misconceptions. What are some common misconceptions about pawn shops that you'd like to address?
Some people in the past have thought that pawn shops are taboo, but it's throughout the years it's become more common for people to come in and use, weekly. I mean, people in need, working people, usually sometimes get stuck in the middle of the week and could use extra cash. Typically, they would just bring in their item, borrow the money, and sometimes pick it up within a week once they get their paycheck. It's become the most convenient way to go by day to day. Nowadays, if you're stuck, you don't have to ask anybody to borrow money. Just stop by us and we'll take care of you.
What are the biggest challenges you face running a pawn shop?
The biggest challenges we face is when clients don't pick up their items. That really breaks our heart. We really want our customers to be able to get their stuff back. Very rarely, but seldom does happen that clients lose their items in pawn because they choose to walk away from it or they lose interest in it. And that's basically it. That's the only thing that concerns us at times, and we do the best that we can to avoid it. But certain things are not in our control. But the good thing about that is your credit doesn't get affected. We don't come after you. We don't call collection agencies. Basically, your collateral is what's backing up your loan.
How do regulations and laws affect your business? How do you ensure compliance?
Well, we ensure compliance. We comply fully with the regulations of the pawn industry in New York based on the terms and conditions. I mean, every pledge and receipt the client receives, on the back of that pledge are the terms and conditions of the loan. And we follow that very strictly. We comply with all the rules and regulations and standards of the industry.
What measures do you take to ensure the security of the items you pawn?
Oh, one of the main reasons of our success is the security factor of people's jewelry. Typical pawn shops keep their stuff on premise and under low security. Here, we use a triple verification step, meaning first of all, the items get confirmed by 2 employees. The item gets sealed in a heat seal serialized money bag, which gets sealed by the client in front of them. Then, in essence, the pawn ticket gets placed on that item and then transported to one of our secure, state-of-the-art vault facilities, fully insured, and the item sits there until you're ready to pick it up. And the way we assure that is, when you come back, we take it out and you match the serial seal bag numbers to your pawn pledge receipt, and those numbers would have to match. This way you know for sure that no one has tampered with your jewelry or personal items.
Without revealing personal details, can you share a memorable story about a customer or transaction?
Yeah, my first interaction with the pawn shop was very personal. My mom was an immigrant in the U.S. in the 70s with my father, and she got into a very difficult spot where she needed to cover a bill for the family. I'm not going to get into particulars what the bill was, but she took me with her. I was a long-awaited child. She took me with her to a number of banks, and she wasn't approved for a loan. And I saw how discouraged she became. And then I told her, Mom, I did a little bit of research, and I told her that there's a pawn location that seems to have a good reputation, and maybe we could pay them a visit. And when we did pay them a visit, she was able to borrow exactly what she needed on her watch that my dad gave her for one of her anniversary gifts. And it was so quick, simple, and easy. My mom was able to collect the money and repay them back within a month and get her item back. And I saw how happy that made her. And remembering that and knowing how much it helped us in the past is what pushes me to help every day.
Who are your typical customers?
No, in New York City, there's no typical customer, and there's no such thing as a typical customer. All of our clients are family. We don't prejudge. We love everyone, and everyone is welcome at New York One Pawn. And I mean everyone.
How has technology impacted your business?
So many businesses complain about technology, and they're saying that the clients are much more educated, and now they know what the value of their items are, so it's harder to deceive clients, and I don't look at it that way. I consider and love doing business with knowledgeable clients. It's easier to do business with people that know and understand the value of what they have. This way, it is easier to make a deal with them when they are aware of what the value of their item is.
Where do you see the future of pawn shops heading? Do you have any predictions for the industry?
As long as the government stands behind us and understands and sees how essential it is for society to be able to get the assistance that they need at the time of when they need is amazing, because, you know, extreme dire situations force people to do crazy things in this life. And when a person is able to satisfy what they need by getting a loan, they will never think of doing the wrong thing in attaining what they need. So if a client comes in and borrows the money and satisfies their situation and are able to work hard and repay it and get it back, I think it's a big deterrent in crime. If you look at it the right way, I see the industry growing as long as the government supports us and the lobbyists support us and help us, and not overregulate us. I think the industry will grow and be a vital, essential business in the community in years to come.
What do you find most satisfying about running a pawn shop?
The satisfaction when the client is so grateful that they didn't have to lose their family heirloom in order for the emergency need at a moment and didn't feel the pressure. There are so many times throughout the years of being in the industry where clients have seller's remorse, and then they say that they needed money and they were forced to sell something that's been in their family for so many years because of an emergency situation. So at New York One Pawn, that's not the case. We will be more than happy to lend you the value and give you the opportunity to come and get your valuables back.
What has been your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest challenge is satisfying all of our clients. And the way that we've overcome those challenges is a key word called greed. We are not greedy. We are here to satisfy our clients first. And then with the client's appreciation, they repay us with the low interest rate and redeem their goods within the frame of the loan.
What advice would you give someone looking to start their own pawn shop?
I would give them advice. The advice that I would give them is they need to work in a lot of fields in order to be a strong understanding individual, to be a people's person. That's what you have to be in the pawn industry. You have to be a people's person. You have to be in the shoes of the client to understand. And if you didn't have that struggle growing up and understanding, then it's going to be very hard. So I feel that the more experience an individual has in his life in other fields dealing with people, the better pawnbroker he can become once he becomes licensed and certified.
In what ways do you and your pawn shop get involved in the local community?
Well, we are members of the National Pawnbrokers Association, where we follow all of the guidelines of the National Pawnbrokers Association. We do a lot of charity work, and we always give back to the community.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers about the world of pawn shops?
So many customers have come in and done transactions with us and said their reactions were, wow, this was so easy, so painless. We thought it's going to be much more difficult and hurting and intrusive. And they are, after doing a transaction in New York One Pawn, they are always happy and relay that to us, and that's what gives us the satisfaction to continue.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed Ronnie's interview, consider visiting him at one of his welcoming locations. You can find more information in the description below.